Can I get a refill over here? Generation Alpha should be called Generation Helpless. They refuse to get jobs, scream when you take their screens away, expect to have food given to them, and they even need help going to the bathroom. Are you talking about your grandchildren who are 2 and 4? Today's my bath day. Prep the washcloth, why don't you? Hello, and welcome to All Generations. Today I'm going to be talking about the newest generation, most commonly known as Generation Alpha. In this video, I will be going over how Generation Alpha was named, the birth years for Generation Alpha, and other nicknames / possible names for the generation. I will also touch on the topics of technology, family, and jobs, and go over some other predictions about Generation Alpha. Not all members of this generation are even born yet, so I can only say so much, but I do want to go over what we know and what people are predicting. Let's start with one thing we do know, how Generation Alpha was named. While a different name could take its place, as I said, the most common name used for the generation following Generation Z right now is Generation Alpha, or Gen Alpha. The name came about in 2005, before the generation even existed. Mark McCrindle, an Australian researcher, decided he wanted to tackle coming up with a name for the next generation. He conducted a survey asking people what they thought would be the best name for the new generation. The most common response to the survey was Generation A, and considering before that we had Generation X, Generation Y / Millennials, and Generation Z, sort of makes sense. McCrindle wasn't into it though. He thought this was a new generation and it didn't make sense to go back to the beginning of what we were already doing. I personally think it'd be fine. We never use those letters and it's kind of like the beginning, but sure. McCrindle still ran with the idea a bit though. He was watching the news on the other side of the world, which for him in Australia was America, the United States of America, and it inspired an idea. The 2005 hurricane season in the Atlantic was a busy one. In fact, it was the most active in recorded history. I am acutely aware of this because at the time I was living in the Florida Panhandle. Anyway, so you may be wondering how hurricanes have anything to do with naming a generation. For those unfamiliar with how it works, each new storm during a particular season gets a name from the Roman / Latin alphabet going alphabetically. So basically it will start like the first storm will start with an A and then B and so on. That year it went Arlene, Brett, Cindy, and you get the picture. That year, though, they went through the entire alphabet. And so after going through the Roman / Latin alphabet, A to Z, they moved on to the Greek one. McCrindle thought this was an idea he could apply to the generations. His argument was that it wasn't a repeat of the old, but instead the beginning of something new. So now that we've covered the origin for the most likely name for the generation, you may be wondering if there have been any other name contenders or any other nicknames in the mix. There are some. With a couple exceptions, most of these names and nicknames still originate with McCrindle though. Just in case they don't like Gen Alpha, let's put some other names out there. The Atlantic writer Joe Pinsker said McCrindle told him other names from the survey included Generation Why Not, Technos, Onliners, Generation Hope, The Saviors, and Generation Surf. Demographer Elwood Carson from Florida State University thinks that this naming system lacks imagination. He has suggested Divergence as an alternative. In a Huffington Post article by Caroline Bologna, Carson is quoted as saying that the newest generation displays unprecedented diversity in almost every dimension one can imagine. And basically he thinks that the name should reflect this. Another nickname is Generation Glass. McCrindle gave them this name because of the glass that they interact with or that he thinks they will interact with in the future, such as in cars and on the wrists and so on. The term screenagers has also been used as a nickname for this generation, probably because they are using screens from the time they can hold them, or in some cases before they can hold them. There is a 2016 documentary with this name, and I've only watched the trailer, but basically it seems like it's about a doctor / filmmaker who has to decide if they should give their teenage daughter an iPhone. And due to the year and the age of the daughter, that this is definitely a Generation Z situation, and so it can be used for either one, or people do use it for either one. And she made this documentary because it seems it's a real conundrum people are facing nowadays, how much technology they give their kids access to or how much they limit it. Other names occasionally used include the global generation, iGen/iGeneration, and digital natives, but the latter two have also been used on the past couple of generations. If a new name becomes more popular, I will probably make a video on that, but by that time there will probably be more information about the generation as well. So next topic, what are the birth years for Generation Alpha? Obviously these are very subject to change and people do already use different birth years, so keep that in mind. McCrindle and I guess his team personally decided on birth years of 2010 to 2024/2025. Now, while not many other people are actually going ahead and assigning birth years for this generation, many others will have the Gen Z birth years ending 2012 to 2015, usually like 2012, so they are likely to shift all of those years a bit. But it all just depends. This generation may be the first to be entirely born in the 21st century. Now let's address Generation Alpha and technology. In terms of the newer generations, technology is always a hot topic. Generation Alpha is growing up not knowing a world before smartphones, Wi-Fi, social media, the iPad, streaming services, smart speakers, fitness/health trackers, certain apps like Instagram or TikTok, and even those cameras that help you back up in a car. Now, a lot of those are true for some or all of Generation Z as well, but Gen Alpha is growing up in a time before these things is even farther behind them. Many of these items can change how people go about their lives and interact with the world. Fitness trackers, for example, can change how people stay healthy. Got my 10,000 steps. On that note, I've also seen predictions that Gen Alpha will be using telemedicine and virtual medicine however they can. In terms of smart speakers/voice assistants like Siri, Google Assistant, and Alexa, many kids are growing up interacting with them, and we really don't know what effects that could have yet. One possible positive is that some of these can actually reduce screen time by allowing you to use your voice instead. Still, you have to wonder the impact of constantly demanding action and information from these devices. Alexa, do my homework. Natalie Frank of business management platform HoneyBook thinks that this generation might actually prefer the digital world. I found an article on a site called Customer Think, which referenced an independent study that found nearly a quarter of Gen Alpha kids prefer to spend time with their friends online than in person. I don't know the details of this study though. This is all somewhat interesting though, and I think we'll see how things play out more over time. In terms of social media, the study found that Gen Alphas are less inclined to use Facebook and Twitter and are more interested in using TikTok and some more anonymous social networking apps. Also, things are definitely always changing and evolving in that realm, so as new apps come out, they could gravitate towards those also. The study found these kids also like YouTube. Some suggest this generation will not question technology they use like older generations did, but will question the way they use it. One general prediction is that because of more technology, Gen Alpha may have more time. Natalie Frank, who I mentioned earlier from HoneyBook, thinks this will lead to more creativity, self-care, and learning for the sake of learning. WGSN predicts we'll continue to see a trend towards mindfulness and meditation. On to a few more tech predictions. FlexTrends predicts that Gen Alpha will grow up interacting with robots and AI. They may also have toys which respond to voice commands. On their site, they reference a study done by the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, which found that 40% of millennial parents would be open to replacing or supplementing a human nanny with a robot nanny. Now, keep in mind, just because they say they would do this doesn't mean they can or will. As a whole, it does seem many millennial parents are comfortable with their children interacting in the digital space and having access to technology, though there's definitely variation. Other tech predictions I've seen include a gamification of learning, or VR, and a potential for a virtual world where people have avatars and they use those to go to work and for entertainment and so on. As we know, the heavy use of technology can change our brains, so the way they think and use information and so on can be a little different. Just like we saw the concern for millennials and see it for Gen Z, there is continued speculation about decreased attention span and impaired social formation in Gen Alpha, and memory could be affected as well. Some people express concern with the amount of time and attention kids are devoting to screens, while others embrace it. On a different note, while there is still a gap in access to technology in some ways, there has been progress. In 2012, a nonprofit called Super Education Highway found that only 30% of school districts had the proper connectivity to support digital learning. They made it a goal to get that to 99% by 2020, and they achieved that goal. So more members of Gen Alpha will have digital learning in schools. Sort of random related thing, the US Common Core got rid of cursive as a requirement in 2010. In the past couple years though, there's actually been a movement to bring it back in a few states. So some students probably might not ever learn it, while others may learn it. Now let's cover the topic of family. One topic that kind of intersects technology and family is the use of social media and privacy in the digital world for these young people. Often parents are creating social media pages for their new babies and kids before they can really comprehend it, and if not, they're posting photos and so on their own pages. It's definitely true for a lot of Gen Z as well, and in general, it's just a new subject that we're all navigating. People have different opinions on this topic for sure. On to the parents more. As the age of first-time mothers has been widening, different generations birth other generations, like it could be Gen Xers or Gen Zers that are having Gen Alpha kids, but I guess it's mostly millennials. Research is finding that millennials place high value on marriage and parenthood. Millennial parents are also really taking into account what their kids want. This can include things like the technology they buy or even where they go on vacation. On that note, there is also a trend towards family travel. Compared to past generations, they may be less likely to be growing up in a traditional household. They may be growing up with single parents, unmarried parents, step-parents, or adoptive parents. There are also more same-sex parents and mixed-race parents. While we don't really know if this will happen, McCrindle predicts that members of Gen Alpha will be living with their parents longer, even into their late 20s, due to staying in education longer. Now, it definitely feels a little early to be talking about this next topic, but people are addressing it, so I thought I would too. And that topic is job/careers. McCrindle said that if current trends continue, we will see Gen Alphas go through 6 distinct careers and have an average of 18 jobs each. Now, he did say if that trend continues, not that he predicts necessarily that will happen. Career writer Dan Schwabel has made some predictions though, and I am going to go through those next. So here's what he thinks. Members of Generation Alpha won't work for companies that don't align with their values, and they will also have the confidence to create change. They will choose technology over human connection and will expect their workplace to be technologically advanced. They may prefer to use technology to communicate with others, but they also may be used to interacting with robots/AI like they're humans. Members of Gen Alpha may like to use tools that help them out so they can focus on the high-impact work. Partly because of the technology use, they may need more support in terms of mental health at work. They will be less concerned about privacy at work. They will embrace diversity at work, and they will start their careers earlier and work for longer. Some branding agencies and digital commerce companies have surveyed the older members of this generation and found that they are very concerned with many issues. Many of them are interested in environmental issues and thus may be interested in careers in that field as well. According to Hotwire Global, Generation Alpha kids are already more keen on recycling than the older generations. One last prediction is that members of this generation will be doing jobs that don't even exist yet. Now, this is something we've seen, over time, but it's kind of interesting. In 2016, the World Economic Forum predicted that over half of kids entering primary school would be working entirely new job types. Some examples I've seen include artificial organ farming and a robotics veterinarian focusing on prosthetic limbs. Comment if you have any interesting ideas or knowledge on this topic. I'm curious to hear. Now on to some more general predictions about Generation Alpha. One is that Generation Alpha will be a large generation. McCrindle predicts that Gen Alpha will have a worldwide population of 2 billion by 2025. That's also an international perspective though. In individual countries and regions, you need to look at their specific fertility rate, child mortality rate, and just the number in terms of population of people who can bear children. On a local Pennsylvania news outlet, I found a quote from Ashley Fell, the communications director at McCrindle, saying that they are coming of age in a unique time in history when the largest economy will have shifted from the United States to China, the fastest growing population will have shifted from the continent of Asia to Africa, and the most populous country will have transitioned from China to India. Grant Thornton, an advisory and accounting firm in the UK, predicts that Gen Alpha will be the longest lived and wealthiest generation. At the same time, Florida State demographer Elwa Carson predicts that they will have more economic inequality. There are also many predictions which are basically a continuation of what we've seen in more recent past generations. For example, at least in the US, Generation Z has been deemed the most diverse generation. Communications agency Hotwire Global says that Gen Alpha is going to replace them as the most diverse generation though. In 2018, the US Census Bureau put out a document predicting that by 2020, less than half of the children in the US would be non-Hispanic white. There's been a general trend of people moving to more urban environments and kids growing up in urban environments, and McCrindle says we'll probably see a continuation of that. He also predicts that Generation Alpha will grow up moving more. Other predicted continuing trends include that Gen Alpha will be more educated and more tech savvy. Some say they will be adept multitaskers and be good at gathering information quickly. Another general Generation Alpha prediction I've seen is that they will prefer to watch a video on a topic than to read an article about it. In regards to the mini predictions, some are stronger than others and have a little more evidence to them, while others are purely speculation. I may touch on this topic a little more in videos on other generations, but there have also been some health conditions on the rise which also are affecting Gen Alpha. These include things like allergies, asthma, autism, and other mental health conditions. With all the screen time, eye strain has also become more common. Well, that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. What other predictions for Gen Alpha do you have personally or have you seen? Comment below. Also be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more content on the generations. Compared to past generations, Hey, that one better?
No.
Hey, can I get a refill over here? Is that too old? Hey, can I get a refill over here? Can I get a refill over here?